Dear learners, welcome back to History Uncovered, where learning English means learning the deeper stories of our world. Have you ever looked at a map of ancient monuments, the Great Pyramid in Egypt, Stonehenge in England, the mysterious temples of Angkor in Cambodia, and felt like they're connected in a strange, invisible way? Not just by history, but by something more. It sounds unbelievable, even mystical. Yet, for over a century, curious minds have noticed something eerie. Many of the world's most ancient and sacred sites seem to line up, often perfectly, along imaginary paths that stretch across the globe. These paths, known as ley lines, have sparked fascination, ridicule, and endless questions. Are they just a coincidence? A trick of geometry and imagination? Or could they be evidence of a forgotten knowledge, a kind of planetary architecture known to ancient civilizations, then buried by time? Let's imagine, for a moment, a civilization long before written history. They didn't have satellites or GPS. No Google Earth. No maps as we know them. And yet, somehow, they placed their sacred monuments on an invisible grid, as if guided by something, or someone, with a higher understanding of the Earth. What if our ancestors knew something about the planet that we have forgotten? That's the mystery we're exploring today, not just as historians, but as fellow seekers of truth. In this journey, we'll uncover the origins of the ley line theory, the strange alignments that continue to baffle researchers, and the deeper human need to find order in chaos. Along the way, you'll learn rich English vocabulary, historical storytelling, and thought-provoking phrases that connect you more deeply to the past and to the language. Before we begin, if you'd like to support this journey into forgotten truths and deeper English learning, you can click the thanks button or tap join to explore exclusive member perks. Your support helps keep this channel going strong, and means the world to us. Now, let's follow the first line, one that begins not with science, but with a strange discovery in the English countryside. The story of ley lines, at least in modern times, begins in 1921, with a quiet Englishman named Alfred Watkins. Watkins wasn't a mystic. He wasn't even a trained historian. He was a businessman, a keen photographer, and a man who loved long walks through the English countryside. But one day, while studying an Ordnance Survey map of Herefordshire, something unusual caught his eye. There, across hills, rivers, and fields, he noticed a straight alignment of ancient landmarks. Stone circles. Standing stones. Old churches. Even prehistoric burial mounds. They seemed to form a perfectly straight line. Watkins called it a ley line. The word ley came from the old Anglo-Saxon term for cleared land or meadows, often the places where these ancient paths or monuments were found. To Watkins, this wasn't some mystical energy grid. It was practical. He believed that in prehistoric times, people had built trackways, long-distance paths that connected sacred and useful places. Over time, newer structures like churches and roads had been built on top of or beside them. His theory was grounded, simple, and, at first, widely ignored. But Watkins wasn't discouraged. In 1925, he published a book called The Old Straight Track, full of maps, photographs, and evidence of these mysterious alignments. It didn't become a bestseller. Still, for a small group of thinkers, the idea stuck. There was something strangely compelling about the idea of ancient people working together across vast distances, guided by invisible lines of meaning. Watkins died in 1935. He never lived to see his idea take off. But decades later, in the 1960s and 70s, During a time of growing interest in earth mysteries, sacred geometry, and New Age spirituality, Watkins' ley lines returned to the spotlight, but now with a twist. What had once been a theory of ancient roads became something far more mysterious. Some claimed the lines carried energy. Others said they connected power points on Earth. Suddenly, ley lines weren't just paths of the past, they were gateways to something deeper, older, and maybe even universal. But before diving into those claims, we need to return to the ground, to the real alignments Watkins saw. Were they coincidences? Or part of a forgotten global design? In the next section, we'll explore some of the most famous ley line connections around the world, and ask the big question, how could so many sacred sites be placed on the same invisible lines? Let's widen the lens. Because what Alfred Watkins noticed in a sleepy corner of England echoes across the globe. In Peru, the Nazca lines, those massive, mysterious geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, are not just stunning from the sky. Some of them align strikingly with distant ancient sites. One line seems to point directly to Easter Island, another to the pyramids of Giza. In Cambodia, the temples of Angkor Wat, with their celestial symmetry, appear to share geometric patterns with temples thousands of miles away in Mexico, like Teotihuacan. Could this be coincidence? Or evidence of a lost architectural language? Now, travel to Stonehenge in England, perhaps the most iconic prehistoric monument. Draw a line from Stonehenge to the Great Pyramid of Giza, and extend it across the Earth's surface. That line also touches the oracle at Delphi in Greece, the ancient city of Petra in Jordan, and Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, all major sacred or cultural sites. This so-called Great Circle alignment has intrigued researchers for years. It doesn't pass through these places exactly, but close enough to raise eyebrows and questions. How could ancient people, oceans apart and millennia apart in time, build sacred sites that seem to fall along the same planetary lines? Skeptics say we're seeing confirmation bias. If you plot enough points on a globe, some will inevitably line up. After all, the Earth is round, and human imagination is powerful. But believers counter, sure, a few coincidences make sense. But this many? And it's not just the locations, it's the mathematical precision. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, sits almost perfectly aligned with true north. Teotihuacan mirrors star constellations. Ancient Chinese cities were planned using geomantic principles that echo modern magnetic field lines. So here's the real question. Did ancient civilizations share knowledge? Or were they all intuitively responding to something they sensed in the earth, magnetic fields, energy flows, natural harmonies? And if they did share knowledge, how? It challenges everything we assume about pre-modern people. We like to think of history as a ladder, primitive, then advanced. But what if it's a circle? What if some knowledge has risen, fallen, and been lost, not once, but many times? The deeper we look, the less the ley line mystery seems like a fantasy, and more like a mirror, reflecting how little we know about our ancestors' capabilities. In our next section, we'll explore how modern technology, from satellite imaging to electromagnetic mapping, is helping us investigate these alignments like never before. Are ley lines just lines on a map, or might they correspond to real energetic or magnetic forces shaping the Earth and our history? For decades, ley lines lived on the fringes, the territory of dreamers, mystics, and New Age believers. But in recent years, something unexpected has happened. Science began to catch up. And it started asking a simple question. What if there's something measurable beneath the myth? Let's start with the Earth itself. Beneath the surface, the planet is alive with magnetic currents, gravitational anomalies, and geomagnetic zones. These are invisible, but very real. Birds and animals navigate by them. Submarines depend on them. And interestingly, some of the ancient sites that lie along so-called ley lines also coincide with these magnetic hot spots. Take Avebury in England, an ancient stone circle not far from Stonehenge. Studies show that it sits atop a junction of underground water and magnetic anomalies. Similar findings have emerged from studies near Machu Picchu in Peru and Chichen Itza in Mexico. Is it possible that ancient builders sensed these energies, not with machines, but with instinct, tradition, or tools long forgotten? Then there's the rise of satellite imaging. With modern tools, researchers can map the Earth's surface in astonishing detail, and they're finding patterns that were impossible to see before. In one 2004 study, researchers discovered that dozens of Neolithic and Bronze Age sites in the British Isles aligned along straight corridors that would only be visible from the air. Did ancient people design for the sky? Were they building maps not just for travelers, but for the heavens? Skeptics remain firm. They argue that when you have thousands of ancient sites and unlimited lines to draw, patterns are inevitable. It's a kind of mathematical illusion. A coincidence masquerading as design. But there's a counterargument. Not all alignments are random. Some follow the sun's path at solstice. Others mirror constellations or align with lunar cycles. These are not accidents. They reflect a deliberate, repeated effort across cultures to connect the Earth to the cosmos. Even military satellite technology has been drawn into the conversation. Some defense engineers noted that certain high-energy zones on Earth, like the so-called dragon lines in China, seem to have strange effects on radio signals and electronic instruments. Could it be that the ancients built on these spots for a reason? And here's the most intriguing thought. What if ancient builders weren't just marking lines, but activating them? Using stone, metal, geometry, and location to enhance or channel the Earth's energy. We don't have all the answers. But science is starting to confirm that something is there, something more than folklore. In our next chapter, we'll travel into the realm of myth, magic, and modern belief. Because for millions of people today, ley lines aren't just about ancient roads or magnetic forces, they're spiritual pathways, sacred veins of energy, and portals to a higher understanding. Long before satellites or archaeology, people walked the land and felt it. To many ancient cultures, the Earth wasn't just a place to live, it was alive. It breathed. It had moods. And it had veins, sacred lines of energy that carried power, knowledge, and spirit. In China, these lines were known as dragon lines, flowing rivers of qi, the life force. Feng Shui masters used them to align palaces, temples, and tombs with cosmic order. A building placed on the wrong spot could invite disaster. One aligned with the Earth's flow could bring generations of peace and power. In Australia, Aboriginal elders speak of song lines, invisible pathways across the land, encoded in songs, stories, and dreams. These lines don't just describe geography, they are geography. To walk them is to connect with ancestors, with creation, with the rhythm of the Earth itself. In South America, the Inca spoke of Sikhs, radial lines extending out from the Temple of the Sun in Cusco, connecting sacred mountains, springs, and shrines. These weren't roads. They were spiritual circuits, marking a sacred network that held the empire together, not just physically, but cosmically. What's astonishing is how many of these belief systems, separated by oceans and centuries, echo the same idea. The Earth has a hidden geometry. Sacred places aren't chosen randomly, they're part of that geometry. And to live in harmony with the Earth, you must respect those lines. In the 20th century, these ideas merged into a movement. New Age thinkers, mystics, and spiritual seekers began to map ley lines not just as straight lines, but as energy grids, chakras, or even a planetary nervous system. Some believe the Earth has major energy centers, like the chakras of the human body, located at places like Mount Shasta in California, Glastonbury in England, and Uluru in Australia. And between them run energy meridians, ley lines. Pilgrimages began. People meditated at crossroads of these lines, seeking healing, visions, or transformation. Festivals formed. Spiritual tourism grew. Critics call it pseudoscience. But believers say the Earth speaks, if you learn to listen. Here's the deeper point. Whether or not ley lines are measurable in volts or Gauss, they matter because humans have always felt something in the land. They shape where we build, what we worship, and how we see the world. And even if the lines aren't real in the scientific sense, they are real in culture, powerful symbols of our search for connection, harmony, and meaning. In the next section, we'll ask an even bolder question. If ley lines do exist, who discovered them first? And how did ancient people, with no satellites or compasses, trace invisible paths across continents? The answer may take us into forgotten technologies, or a level of consciousness we've only begun to rediscover. Imagine you're living thousands of years ago. No drones. No Google Earth. No planes, compasses, or accurate maps. Just the land, the stars, and your instincts. Now ask yourself, how could ancient people possibly align monuments hundreds, even thousands, of kilometers apart, along invisible, straight lines? Some say it's impossible. That all this talk of ley lines is just coincidence, humans drawing patterns where none exist. But others point to growing evidence of something more. Something intentional. Let's look at 3 possible explanations. 1. Celestial navigation and star mapping. Ancient cultures were master astronomers. They tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and stars with stunning precision. It's possible that by observing where certain celestial bodies rose or set, especially on solstices or equinoxes, they could mark azimuths, or straight directions, across the landscape. A rising star might align with a distant hill, guiding the path between 2 sacred sites. This would mean the sky was their compass, and the land was their canvas. 2. Sound and vibration mapping. Some theorists suggest the ancients used acoustics, understanding how sound travels across the landscape, to determine special places. There are sites where natural echoes, standing waves, or magnetic anomalies occur, which might have been felt or heard. Could they have mapped resonant corridors across the Earth, tuning into something deeper than sight? 3. Forgotten technologies or knowledge. Here's where it gets truly mysterious. In places like Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica, ancient builders achieved astonishing feats, aligning pyramids to true north, carving massive stones with uncanny precision, and understanding planetary cycles that modern science only confirmed recently. Some researchers speculate that Earth energy mapping was part of an ancient science, maybe passed down through oral traditions, secret priesthoods, or even civilizations we no longer remember. Others go further. Could ancient people access altered states of consciousness, through drumming, meditation, or natural substances that allowed them to feel these lines? It sounds far-fetched. But modern studies show that humans have a subtle ability to detect magnetic changes or spatial orientation changes subconsciously. What if our ancestors were just more attuned to the planet than we are now? There's one more idea worth considering, and it might be the most profound of all. What if we didn't discover the ley lines? What if we're simply remembering them? What if these alignments, like the golden ratio in nature or harmonic resonance in music, are part of a universal pattern that repeats itself across stars, seas, and stone? Next, we'll explore the critics and why scientists have pushed back hard on ley lines. Are we just seeing patterns that aren't there? Or is science still catching up with something ancient and true? As the mystery of ley lines gained attention, so too did the critics. Scientists, archaeologists, and geographers began to push back. Not just gently, but forcefully. They raised a simple but powerful question. Is it possible we're just connecting dots that were never meant to be connected? This concept even has a name, pareidolia, the human tendency to perceive patterns where none exist. Like seeing faces in clouds. Or shapes in constellations. Or straight lines through random points on a map. Let's break down the main arguments skeptics use. 1. Too many ancient sites exist, lines are inevitable. Across the UK alone, there are tens of thousands of ancient structures, barrows, stone circles, hill forts, and churches. Mathematically speaking, if you take enough points and draw enough lines, some of them will appear to align, purely by chance. Skeptics argue that ley lines are simply retroactive patterns. We're drawing lines between sites after the fact, instead of proving that ancient people intended those alignments when they built them. 2. Different cultures, different purposes. Another issue, ley lines often connect monuments from different cultures, times, and purposes. A Neolithic tomb, a medieval church, and a 19th-century landmark, all in a line. Does this mean those builders shared a cosmic blueprint? Or are we imposing meaning where none existed? Historians warn against cherry-picking, selecting only the sites that fit a theory, and ignoring the ones that don't. 3. No physical evidence of use as roads. Alfred Watkins believed ley lines were old trackways, practical roads between places. But archaeologists have found little to no physical evidence of continuous, ancient roads following these alignments. In other words, while some sites may align visually, they weren't necessarily traveled or even known to each other's builders. But here's the thing, even among skeptics, there's a strange respect for the ley line mystery. Many acknowledge that some alignments, like the Nazca lines, the Giza pyramids, or the layout of Stonehenge, are unusually precise. And that ancient people had a far greater awareness of astronomy, geometry, and landscape than we've often given them credit for. So maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Maybe not every ley line is a secret code. Maybe some are just coincidence. But maybe a few of them are real. Real enough to make us ask deeper questions. Not just about lines on a map, but about the minds that drew them. In our final section, we'll look at how ley lines continue to influence modern culture, beliefs, and even art, and why these ancient ideas still resonate in a world of satellites, skyscrapers, and smartphones. Today, we live in an age of GPS satellites, AI mapping, and drones that can scan an entire continent from space. We know more about our planet than ever before. And yet, the idea of ley lines continues to fascinate us. They show up in unexpected places, in video games like Assassin's Creed, in fantasy novels, in Hollywood scripts. They're painted into artworks, etched into fictional maps, whispered about in conspiracy forums, and used by spiritual seekers searching for balance and energy. Why? Because ley lines, whether literal or symbolic, speak to something deeper than geography. They represent the human longing to find connection, to believe that we are part of a design larger than ourselves. That the ancient world wasn't just scattered ruins and broken stones, but a place of harmony, intention, and purpose. Even if some lines are coincidental, the way we see them reveal something real. We crave stories that bind our past to our present. We want meaning etched into landscapes, not just data on a screen. And we're fascinated by the idea that maybe, just maybe, our ancestors knew something we forgot. For some, ley lines are spiritual. They represent Earth's energy flow, or a kind of natural acupuncture running through mountains, valleys, and oceans. Pilgrims still walk these paths. Artists still draw them. Historians still debate them. But you don't have to believe in mystical energies to appreciate the beauty of the concept. Because whether by design or chance, these alignments remind us of something powerful. That across time and culture, human beings have always tried to connect sacred spaces. To draw invisible lines, of trade, of faith, of power, of memory. And even now, with all our modern tools, we're still trying to understand why. So what have we uncovered? A 20th century man, Alfred Watkins, who saw old straight tracks in the English landscape. A global pattern, mysterious alignments of ancient monuments and sacred sites. Competing theories, science, spirituality, coincidence, or code. A modern myth that still inspires curiosity, travel, art, and belief. This isn't just a story about geography. It's a story about how humans see the world, and how we try to map the unseen. Thanks for watching History Uncovered. If this journey inspired you to look at maps, monuments, or your surroundings with new eyes, hit that like button. Share your thoughts below. Do you think some ancient sites were intentionally aligned? Or is it all pattern and perception? Subscribe for more stories that blend real events, mystery, and deep English learning. Together, we explore the past to better understand the present. Let history guide your language. And let your curiosity draw the lines.